My name is Sarah, and I never believed in ghosts. At least, not until I started working as a tour guide at the old Sydney quarantine station. The place has a dark history. Thousands of people died there over the years, victims of terrible diseases. But I always regarded it as just historical facts, nothing more. Everything changed that winter night. The wind howled through the abandoned buildings as I made the final rounds before closing. The shadows seemed to move through the empty corridors. A shiver ran down my spine, but I tried to convince myself it was just the cold. In the days that followed, strange things started happening. At first, they were subtle details, objects out of place, doors I was sure I had locked appearing open in the morning. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself I was just distracted. But then the events became more intense. I started hearing whispers in the empty corridors, as if someone was speaking very softly. The smell of antiseptic and illness sometimes lingered in the air, even in the long-abandoned buildings. One night, I was checking the old morgue when I felt a presence behind me. I turned abruptly, but no one was there. However, in the fogged-up mirror on the wall, I briefly saw the reflection of a man dressed as a 19th-century doctor, staring at me with hollow eyes. I blinked, and the image vanished.
Ibegan having terrible nightmares.
I dreamed I was trapped in one of the infirmaries, surrounded by dying patients begging for help. Their faces were pale and disfigured, their sunken eyes staring at me accusingly. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I woke up drenched in sweat, feeling cold hands touching me. The nightmares began to blend with reality. During the day, I sometimes saw figures out of the corner of my eye, pale figures in old-fashioned clothing that vanished when I looked directly at them. The air would suddenly turn cold, even on hot days. Objects moved by themselves. Once, I saw a rusty wheelchair slowly rolling down the corridor with no one pushing it. My colleagues noticed my strange behavior. I was pale, with deep dark circles under my eyes, jumping at every noise. Sarah, the supervisor, called me in for a chat. "You look terrible," she said with concern. "Maybe you need a few days off." I shook my head. "I'm fine, I just haven't been sleeping well." I couldn't tell her the truth. She would think I was crazy. That night, I was alone, doing inventory in the storage room. The shelves were full of old objects, rusty stretchers, medicine bottles, worn-out clothes. Suddenly, all the objects started vibrating and moving on their own. Bottles exploded, shards flying through the air. The stretchers creaked and twisted as if they were alive. I ran in panic toward the exit, but the door slammed shut violently. I pounded on the wood, screaming for help. That's when I heard a raspy voice behind me, "You can't escape. No one escapes the quarantine." I turned slowly. A man stood there, or rather, something that had once been a man. His skin was gray and covered in pustules, his eyes were black empty pits. He wore a nurse's uniform stained with blood. He smiled, revealing rotten teeth. "Welcome to the station, Sarah," he said. "You will stay with us forever." I screamed and tried to run, but my feet sank into the ground as if it were quicksand. Other figures began emerging from the shadows, patients with faces disfigured by smallpox, skeletal thin children, nurses with hollow gazes. Their cold hands grabbed me, pulling me down. "You are ours now," they whispered in unison. "Part of the eternal quarantine." I fought in desperation, but it was useless. I was sinking deeper into the icy darkness. That's when I heard a different voice, distant but familiar. "Sarah. Sarah, wake up." I opened my eyes, gasping for breath. Sarah, my supervisor, was shaking me. I had fainted in the storage room. "My God, you're freezing," she said. "Let's get you home." In the following days, I stayed home, recovering. The doctors said I had a panic attack, probably caused by stress. But I knew the truth. Those entities, whatever they were, had let me go for now. When I returned to work, everything seemed normal. No strange events or apparitions. But sometimes when I'm alone in one of the old buildings, I feel eyes watching me. And I know they are waiting, as they always have. Now I understand why this place is haunted. It's not just the ghosts of those who died here. It's the despair, loneliness, and fear that have impregnated these walls over the decades. The quarantine never really ended, it just changed form. I continue working here, guiding tourists through the dark corridors. I tell them the historical facts, the cold numbers of the dead and sick. But I don't tell them about the things I saw and felt. They wouldn't believe me. Or worse, they might believe, and that would make them targets too. At night, before leaving, I always do the same thing. I go through each building, each room, and say in a low voice, I know you're here. I respect your pain. But please leave me alone. I don't know if it works. But for now, the entities seem to have retreated. Perhaps they've realized that I'm more useful alive, bringing new visitors for them to watch and haunt. Sometimes I wonder if I should stop working here, flee far from this cursed place. But something stops me. Maybe it's the guilt of abandoning those tortured souls. Or maybe part of me got stuck that night in the storage room. A part that now belongs to the station, just like all the other ghosts. So I stay here, trapped between two worlds. By day, I'm the smiling guide, telling stories to tourists. By night, I'm the reluctant guardian of the station's dark secrets. And each passing day, the line between these two roles becomes thinner. Yesterday, while guiding a group, I saw my reflection in a window. For an instant, my eyes looked hollow, and my skin had a sickly grayish tone. I blinked, and the image returned to normal. But I know what I saw. The station is slowly changing me, transforming me into something different. Part of me wants to fight this. But another part, a part that grows every day, wants to embrace this transformation. After all, if I can't escape this place, maybe the only option is to become part of it. Who knows? Maybe as one of them, I will finally find peace. So if you ever visit the quarantine station and see a guide with hollow eyes and a strange smile, remember, not all prisoners of this place are dead. Some of us still walk, talk, and breathe, but our souls already belong to the station. Welcome to the eternal quarantine. Your visit may be longer than you imagine.